For weeks, something felt off. It was a subtle shift, like the air changing before a storm. Sarah, my wife of 10 years, was different. The easy laughter that used to fill our home had been replaced by a quiet, almost brittle tension. Our conversations, once a free-flowing river of shared thoughts and dreams, were now stilted, filled with awkward pauses and polite one-word answers. She was physically present, but her mind seemed to be miles away, lost in a world I was no longer a part of. At first, I blamed myself. Was I working too much? Had I become boring? Predictable? I tried to reignite the spark. I planned date nights to our favorite restaurants, suggested weekend getaways to the coast where we first met, and brought home her favorite flowers, hoping the familiar scent would bring back the woman I knew. But each attempt was met with a polite, yet distant smile. The flowers were beautiful, but they stayed in their vase, untouched. The date nights felt like business meetings, with an unspoken agenda hanging between us. Her phone, once a shared device for looking up recipes or showing each other funny videos, had become a fortress. It was always face down on the table, and a new passcode locked it away from me. When it buzzed, she'd snatch it up, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes before she'd turn away to reply. "Just work," she'd mutter, but her fingers would be flying across the screen with an urgency that didn't match her casual tone. The late nights at the office became more frequent. "A big project," she'd say, her voice tired over the phone. I'd stay up, a plate of her favorite dinner getting cold on the counter, waiting for the sound of her car in the driveway. When she finally came home, smelling faintly of a perfume that wasn't hers, she'd brush past me with a quick, "I'm exhausted," and head straight for the shower, washing away the day, and perhaps something more. The change wasn't just in her actions, it was in her eyes. The warmth was gone, replaced by a guardedness that kept me at arm's length. I'd look at her across the dinner table and see a stranger. I spent countless nights lying awake next to her, listening to her steady breathing, wondering what had happened. Where did our love go? Why did she seem so far away, even when she was right beside me? The silence in the dark was deafening, filled with the questions I was too afraid to ask. One Tuesday morning, the truth arrived. Not with a dramatic confrontation, but in a plain manila envelope slipped under our door. I almost missed it, thinking it was just junk mail. My name was handwritten on the front. Inside there were no words, just a series of photographs. My hands trembled as I looked at them. It was Sarah. She was laughing, her head thrown back in a way I hadn't seen in months. Her hand was intertwined with another man's as they walked out of a cozy-looking cafe. In another photo, they were kissing, his arm wrapped tightly around her waist. The world tilted on its axis. The air was sucked from my lungs. Every late night, every vague text, every distant look, it all clicked into place with a sickening finality. It wasn't a project at work. It wasn't me being boring. It was him, the man in the photos. The pain was immediate and visceral, a physical blow to the chest that left me gasping for air. This was the reason for the chasm that had opened between us. This was the secret she had been guarding so fiercely behind her locked phone and tired excuses. I sat there on the floor, the photos spread out like a mosaic of my shattered life. The quiet house, which had once been my sanctuary, now felt like a tomb. I thought back to our wedding day, the promises we made, the future we had painted together. It all seemed like a lie, a cruel joke. The woman I had vowed to love and cherish had been living a double life. The nights I had spent wondering what I did wrong were a waste. The problem wasn't with me, it was her betrayal. When Sarah came home that evening, humming a tune I didn't recognize, she found me sitting at the kitchen table, the photos laid out in a neat row. The color drained from her face. The humming stopped. For the first time in months, the silence wasn't empty. It was heavy with the undeniable, heartbreaking truth. There were no more questions to ask. The truth had arrived, and with it, the end of everything we once were. Confronting her was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. The initial shock on her face gave way to a flood of tears and frantic apologies. She claimed it was a mistake, a moment of weakness that had spiraled out of control. She said she was confused, unhappy, and that this other man meant nothing. But her words felt hollow, rehearsed. The trust, the very foundation of our marriage, had been pulverized. How could I ever look at her again without seeing those pictures, without feeling the sting of her betrayal? The weeks that followed were a blur of painful conversations and sleepless nights in separate rooms. The house was filled with a heavy, suffocating sadness. I realized that a marriage can't be repaired with apologies alone. The person I loved had made a choice, and that choice had broken us. It wasn't about the other man, it was about the lies, the deceit, and the complete disregard for the life we had built together. Deciding to leave was both an ending and a beginning. It was the end of a decade of shared memories, but it was the beginning of my journey toward healing. Packing my bags was surreal. Each item, a photo from a vacation, a mug she bought me, a book we both loved, was a painful reminder of what I was losing. But with each box I packed, I also felt a strange sense of liberation. I was no longer living in a state of confusion and suspicion. The truth, as devastating as it was, had set me free. Healing is not a straight line. There are days when the anger and sadness are overwhelming. There are days I miss the woman she used to be, the partner I thought I had. But there are also days filled with a quiet hope. I started reconnecting with friends, rediscovering old hobbies, and slowly, piece by piece, rebuilding my life. I learned that my worth was never tied to her fidelity. Her choices were a reflection of her, not of me. The journey has been long and difficult, but I'm finding my way back to myself. I'm learning to trust again, starting with trusting my own instincts. The nights are no longer spent wondering why she changed. I know why. And while that knowledge brought immense pain, it also brought clarity. It allowed me to close a chapter and start writing a new one, a story where I am the main character, a story of resilience, self-respect, and the quiet strength it takes to walk away from a love that was no longer true. Thank you so much for watching and for being a part of this community. If this story resonated with you, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing for more content. Your support means the world. Take care.